Excellent. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Inshallah, everyone's doing well.
Wa
Um,
alaikum salam.
Thanks for that quick intro. We will definitely be doing this as a team, so I'm excited to be presenting with the following periods. But to kick it off, we'll start with Brother Ali John. He'll help us kick off the presentation, and then we can get into introductions.
All right. Thank you, Hasnain. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Walaikum assalam.
Uh, what we'll do today is I know, for the past 2 hours, I think starting at 9 o'clock all the way up to 11, your brains are probably, frying now because you've got software engineers, data scientists, all of them, speaking about technology and smarts and all that stuff. So I wouldn't call this portion a dumber portion of the day, but I would say not as smart as those folks. So I was listening to Sister Nazneen and Brother Haider Ali, and mashallah, very knowledgeable presentations. Kudos to them for being in the cutting edge of the technology. So as you've heard, maybe from the software engineers and data scientists and everybody else, there is a lot of technology that is used to build certain things, right? I mean, technology on its own, what good is it if it's not used to create something that people can use and profit out of? This portion, we're going to talk about how and who does that, right? Who takes that technology, makes it useful to end users, what we call it, or customers or regular people, so that they can use it, they can benefit from that technology. And then the companies, as they are creating that product or the technology and putting it out to the people, they can also profit from that, right? So essentially the business side of things. So when you talk about the business side of things, there's two areas that we're going to address today. The first is the product management, and then the second is the project and slash program management. There's subtle differences between those. I'll address that, but I think for today's purposes, we'll lump them into one thing, which is project management. So product managers, what do product managers do, or what are they, right? So essentially, these folks are the CEOs, or the owners of a company. If you imagine in a restaurant, right? I mean, who that person that owns that, is creating that product. That is what you would call a product manager. They are the ones that define what are we going to make, right? And then why are we going to make it, and who are we making it for, and how much money are we going to make out of that? So essentially taking the technology, talking to the engineer, saying, yeah, this is cool, but how can I use it to actually benefit the people and essentially create profit for the company? So that is product managers. They are the ones that define what, why, and for whom are we building it, and how much money are we going to make from that. And now, partnering, with product managers are the project and program managers, right? So the project managers come in, and they are, if you can imagine, sort of the adults in the room, right? You have the engineers who have wild ideas. They say, oh, product manager comes in and they say, oh, I want to make a car. And then the engineer, if they're really, really smart, or if they want to show off the technology and stuff like that, they might say, oh, I can build, a 24-wheel car that goes 600 miles an hour, to do stuff. But they may come in and then say, together with the product manager, they say, well, no, we don't really need that. We just need a small car to go get groceries from Lucky's or from, the market. So that conversations defining, like, this is what we're going to do, and then putting some guardrails or some boundaries around that, saying, okay, yes, product manager, this is what you want to build. Engineers, this is how you're going to build it. Now let's figure out, when can we get it done, right? How much is it going to cost for us? And then as we start off and do these things, how far along are we? Because let's say you start off and then say, I want to make a car. You can't have 15 years to build a car, because by then everybody else will have cars, or maybe even flying planes. So you will be, late to come into the game. So there are, timelines, restrictions, which we call it, schedules that you have to abide by, right? Or say, okay, well, we're going to do this within the 6 months. We're going to create a car that goes from here to there and, gives you 50 miles to a gallon or so. and then figuring it out, saying, okay, fine, we'll do it in 6 months. Then how much is going to cost for us to do this? You can't have unlimited budget because the company is going to go bankrupt by the time they create that product, right? So they'll figure out, okay, we're going to make this car. It's a small car. It's going to cost us, $50,000 to make that. And then keeping tabs on it, saying, yes, are we spending the right money or not? Are we going to run out of money or not? What are the issues that we're facing, while building this car, right? So these are the things that a project or a program manager is going to do. And also, as we are working through building this car, are we, facing any hurdles? Are there any, issues that are coming up? Maybe we were expecting 4 wheels to be delivered. We only have 3 wheels now. What do we do, right? So things like that, having those conversations, keeping tabs on how things are progressing, reporting that, asking for help from different teams if you are stuck. So these are the different things that, a program or a project manager does. So just before I move on, a quick distinction between what a project and a program is. A project is a small, relatively fixed, endeavor where you say, I'm going to do X, buy this, at this cost. That's it. Whereas a program could be a collection of these small projects, right? It becomes a program. It becomes more of a strategy for a company where they say, well, we're creating a program to, create 50 cars, right? That becomes a program. And then each car could be one, project. So essentially, these are, the higher level areas. I will hand it over to Hasnain to progress. And I think we're going to do introductions, next. So go ahead, Brother Hasnain.
Let's do it. We do have just a quick slide here. I think one thing to add, thank you, Brother Ali, for that great introduction, is that when you looked at product management, and like you said, it's considered potentially the CEO of the product, right? But you might see when you're applying for jobs or looking that there's product managers that exist and lots that exist at a big company. So what are they doing, right? What is their role? So just really quickly, for example, the most famous product manager may be considered, at least in the Silicon Valley, is Steve Jobs, right? Somebody who had an idea, lots of ideas, right? And worked with people that were, and he even said himself, much smarter than himself in those disciplines to bring that idea to fruition, right? To bring it to life. But what about all the product managers that are at Apple now, right? So those are really people that own an area or a smaller area or feature set inside of the larger product, right? So if you looked at, for example, like a notification, right? If you got a notification on your phone, so Apple obviously has a CEO, right? But if you looked at a specific notification or the way that it's interacting with the phone, there's a product manager that's working with a larger team to figure out how should that feature work? How should the notification appear? How should it be designed? And obviously a designer owns that, and a software engineer works on how it's actually delivered. But the way that we work with the customer and understand what's most pleasing and what's going to make this feature really stick with everyone, that's in the hands of the product manager. Excellent. And just a quick overview, right before we get introductions, is this is a very handy slide. A lot of people point to this when thinking about product management, is that they really sit between, just like I was showing with that example, between design, tech, and the business, right? It's the person that is responsible for that communication across these three groups, and to really understand and communicate what is the customer really thinking, or what's going to really fit that need. Whether it be building a car or building a phone. Great, so we'll just jump into some quick introductions. So I've been speaking for a bit. My name is Hasnain Nazr. As far as education, so I went to Santa Cruz, UCSC, and studied actually politics, and I also majored in IT and sociology. And then following that, I did my master's at Berkeley at the information school, focused mostly on what is called MIMS, but basically very akin to information systems management. And after that, I joined a company called Workday. I've been a product manager for about 5 years, and now I lead a group of PMs at the organization. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Brother Hameed to introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Brother Hasnain and Brother Ali Jan, for a great start. I'm Hameed, currently with Uber for the last 2 years as a PM manager, technical program manager, working with the internationalization team at Uber. Prior to Uber, I was a colleague of Brother Hasnain for 2 years, a product manager, and before that, I was at Microsoft for 17 years as a software test engineer lead. So I've changed role between engineering to product management to technical program management. So one thing I want to emphasize is that if you have the basic skills and if you have some tech skills, you can move from role to role. So don't feel yourself that you're boxed into a role for the rest of your life. And I'll pass it on to Brother Jarrar.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Myself, Jarrar Syed, and I work as a project manager at Blue Shield of California. I've been there for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was working for Chevron Federal Credit Union. My area of focus and experience is in project management. Education-wise, I've done my master's in business administration. And I think looking forward to this discussion. Again, thank you. Brother Ali?
Oh, assalamu alaikum. You've heard me already. So my background is actually, I have a bachelor's in business from, matter of fact, 2 universities. I went to both San Jose State and Cal State, East Bay, because as I was, coming up, I was working during the days and in the evenings going to college. So whenever or wherever the classes were available, I took that. So I am the least educated out of this group. Most of these brothers, mashallah, have masters, but I just have a bachelor's in business. And I have about I think about 20, 25 years of experience between, started off as a product manager and marketing manager, and then grew into program and project management. So now I work for Blue Shield, with brother Hussein or Jarrar as well. And I'm a senior manager there, responsible for one of the PMO groups there.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll move on to the next section, which is going to be around just the education required. And as you can tell, even just from myself and the panelists, I don't even reflect this, right? Really, right away. So the reason I want to point that out is that product managers really can come from all disciplines, right? The most often said, at least thing in product management, typically is somebody that has a good T-shape. And what that means is somebody that has an expertise in a specific area. So if you go down, but horizontally can also speak across the board, right? So it doesn't mean that they're a specialist in even that area really, right? But at least they have a deep understanding of it. They may know the market really well, the customer, or really just the problem area, right? They may have felt the problem themselves and are a user of the product themselves, and that's why they're so passionate about it, right? But typically, what we do see now as the role has evolved is that a business degree is a strong backbone to have, given that you are going to be speaking to sales, marketing, in those groups, and to have that type of backbone is extremely important. And then what's highly suggested, at least in the area that that it's become popularized, at least for product management in the Silicon Valley, is having a technical background or a technical degree is suggested and very helpful, and that you'll have an easier time communicating with your counterparts who are often your best friends are going to be the developers in that case. And I'll leave the certifications for everybody else to talk about as well. But I definitely, the rest of this presentation hopefully is just, I'll say a few words and I hope to have us pass it around and speak to each of these because we all have very diverse backgrounds. Would anybody like to kick it off on this side?
Sure, I'll talk a little bit more about the education required, and depending on the role, the combination of these may vary. So for project management, program management, highly emphasize on business acumen and the expertise. On the product management, you need a combination of both, because the more time you spend with engineers, you have to understand their lingo, and you have to understand that, ask the right questions. If they're telling you there is a technical shortcoming or a technical blockers, and you need to go and unblock it for them, you better know what the problem is. On the technical program management, there is a lot of emphasis actually on technical part, along with the business. So I want to make sure that we emphasize that. And for you to move between roles, having that combination is very important. Thank you.
Great. Would anybody like to add anything else?
I think, oh, brother Hameed, go ahead, brother. I thought you were saying. Or someone making a comment. Okay, so I think brother Hameed, agree with him. Like there are sometimes distinction between a regular product or project manager or program manager versus technical. So there's heavy emphasis on the technical requirements for those type of roles. But other than that, I've seen in my case, it's mostly a general minimum bachelor's background, not so much specifically on a business background, but general business bachelor's degree with some sort of experience within that product management or project management or program management area. Some exposure to that will help break it into this career path.
Excellent. And just to speak to that last bullet point there around certifications, this question's asked a lot when entering the PM arena, and honestly, the answer varies. Is that these things can certainly help in at least getting you an understanding of what the industry looks like or what the space looks like. But really, when it comes down to getting a job, especially the beginning of product management, it's really about those interviews and networking. And PM is one of those interesting spaces, and we could talk about it later in the presentation, where they say you have to have PM experience to become a PM. So how do you become a PM, right? So it can be a little tricky, and that's why the networking, as well as a strong showcase of communication, as well as a portfolio and maybe building your own things, or showing that you really like to tinker with ideas and you work with the team to deliver something, right? For example, when I first started in product management, you know, I was doing consulting on the side. I was building websites for random nonprofits. I was doing whatever I could to kind of show that, you know, I like this space. I like working with people that have some problems. I like problem solving, but I might not have all the skills to really deliver the product. And I just like working with a group of people and figuring out how to do it. So that actually blends perfectly into what is needed to become a good PM. So the first bullet point that we all certainly want to highlight is that you're a people person. This is the role for somebody who at the end of the day wants to work with people and loves teamwork and communication and figuring out problems, and working all together to deliver something. I'll leave it at that first, and we could circle back to me, but I'll pass it on to the other panelists.
Yeah, I mean, I think to add to what you were saying, Hasnain, just a note on the certifications aspect of it. If you were interested, you can go to pmi.org, which is Project Management Institute, and then also read up Google Agile, or Agile, Scrum methodology, just to kind of get an idea on that. But going back to the skills, yes, I can't emphasize enough in terms of the program managers and the product managers having good people skills and interpersonal skills, right? I mean, I think communication is the key, to this role, because that's what you're doing. My day starts off, 8 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever time it is, all the way, to the end is I'm constantly in meetings. I'm constantly talking, presenting, discussing issues, trying to figure out, brainstorming. So I think, yes, the key here is, the people person. You have to be a people person. You have to like working with people. You cannot just say that, oh, well, leave me alone. I'm going to do my coding and I'm done with that. Yes, that is a good engineer. That's a good, way for maybe a scientist or a doctor or somebody else, but not for a product or a program manager. And then some of the other skills, like, you mentioned, Hasnain, is yes, communication, brainstorming, being involved in that, liking, problem solving, involving other people, drawing out, ideas. Some of these things, are, I think, if all of these, skills that I'm talking to you are sort of second nature for you, then I think this is something that you should definitely look into, even with a, technical or business degree or arts degree or whatever it is. But if you have, as long as you have that people skills, the interpersonal skills, I think you'll do really, really good in one of these roles.
Yeah, just a quick bit to add why it's so important, right? And I think Ali and Hasnain nailed it, but it's needed for you to be successful as well. It's not like, I mean, people need to trust you. People need to, they look up to you to driving their effort all the way till the end. And the only way you can do that, you have that camaraderie with them, working with them day to day, and building that trust, that relationship, that you can get things done for them and you can help them. There's no saying of, this is not something in my area of focus, I can't help you with that. You at least get them to a point or direct them to an individual or a group that can help them out. So you need to have that, it's a must-have that you are a people person to be successful at your role.
Thank you. And one of the role of the PM, be it product manager, program manager, or technical program manager, is to help with the help of the manager, shield the team from all the noise that may come their way. And your job is to make sure that you help them focus. And that's where you build trust with the team. Because engineers' time is very valuable. As Brother Ali mentioned at the beginning, a couple of things. They want to do cool projects. And the rest of the team, other teams, your teams in a different division, want to come and solve and ask them to solve problems. One of the things is that for you to say, you know what, we have a schedule, we want to go by this. And that's where you also help you build trust with the team, and the teamwork comes into play. I wanted to just add that because it's a very common thing that happens.
Excellent. All great points. Just keeping track of the time, we'll go ahead and move on and get to earning potential. Brother Hameed, would you like to speak to this first?
Yes. Now the most important part. No, I'm just kidding. The monetary, and I put this. Hope it's not too crowded of a slide, but I wanted to share with you the range. The project management, program management, product management roles. They have the core basic skills, but they vary in mileage in terms of the salary, and depending where you are in the country, and whether it's sometimes tech versus non-tech, it varies as well. The project management range is 56K up to 60, and these are just from one source, and you might see different numbers. The most important part for everyone is to do what you like to do, and to find and push yourself to learn more skills. You start on the mid 50s or under 100 in most cases, but by the time you reach the peak of your career, you have tripled your salary. That's something that you want to get out of this slide. If you look at the range, so you start with 50, and then your late career, you go to 140 for project management. Similar thing for program management is in the 50s, and you go to 160, and then product management managers from 70 to 170. So you see the progression there, and that's the most one of the most consistent aspect of the compensation. That's what the most reliable aspect of compensation that I would say exists across the board. Of course, there are bonuses depending on how the company does, how the economy is going, and that range is a wide range. RSUs, restricted stock unit. These are a way for company to attract talent and keep them, retain them, because they have a schedule. When you join a company, they offer you this, but they have a schedule, they have conditions. You don't get RSUs right away because people take it and say, oh, I'm gonna go and find the next job and just keep on moving from job to job. So in a lot of cases, that one get vested after a year and then have a regular schedule. And we can talk more about it once we go to Q&A if there are questions. And brothers, if you want to add anything, please feel free to do so.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brother Hameed. So we'll get into the work-life balance. And so I'll just kick this off in saying that it really depends on a variety of things. So first is the startup versus an established company, right? So like we said, right, if a product manager is the person helping identify what the problem is and what potentially the solution should be as a team, at a startup, it's going to be a lot more, right? There's going to be a lot more emphasis on figuring out what we should be doing, right? What should we be building? What's really the pain point here, right? Versus at an established company, for example, like I mentioned, like Apple, right? You're going to have a lot more understanding as to what has been working, and you're working within that group. Obviously, there's going to be new products and new features and new things that come out that are going to require like a fair amount of work, but depending on the company culture and it being a startup and an established company, the time can vary quite heavily. I know the brothers have a lot of thoughts here, so I'll pass it on, and then I'm happy to wrap this up as well.
I don't know if anyone else have to add. Yeah, I'm not on mute. I think the startup, I haven't worked for a startup yet, but I can imagine. But I think things sometimes, it depends on the type of and nature of project or program you're part of, and how critical it is. That can impact your work-life balance to a certain period of time in a year. So I think even with established companies, there are some times where you spend more hours. 40-hour week is typically is the general norm, but I think some of the PMs, project managers, program managers, and product managers sometimes end up working more than that. And again, that's strictly based on the type of the nature of work or complexity on hand for that phase of during the year. So I
think that's,
go ahead if anyone else wants to add.
I think so, Brother Lijan. Go ahead, or Brother Hameed.
Yeah, I think to add one more dimension, a lot of this also how you set things as expectation with your management. How you work with them, what is your work schedule. If you're young, you might want to go say, I want to prove myself, and you work 60 hours a week. But then you have got to set expectation that you cannot go on like that forever. In a lot of cases, when there's a peak where you have to work a lot, good management will work with you to give you some time off. You work 4 days a week, you work 10 hours, and you want to take a Friday off because you're going to go to Friday prayer, and then after that you want to hang out with friends or family, you'll do that. So I think a lot depends on you as well. Don't feel that you're boxed in and the management tells you to do this and you're going to go in there and just obey what they say.
I think that's an excellent point right there, is that one thing we didn't really mention as much is obviously a lot of product managers are responsible for speaking with the stakeholders, right? And there's a variety of people that will influence it, but one being obviously the bosses or the investors in the very company, right? So it is the responsibility of you in this role to really communicate what is possible within a time frame, and manage your own schedule and fight for it as well. But it's complicated, right? Because you want to be first to market sometimes, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you and the team have an appropriate amount of time to do what you like as well. Okay, we're going to fly through these next slides so we can get to the Q&A. So geography, it's really anywhere, right? I think the common myth we wanted to point out is that PMs, all the three that we have listed out, are really only a tech space. That's certainly not true. And one thing to add that we put here is that as long as they're a product, there is going to be a PM involved, right? So if there is a feature, since you can argue since the dawn of time, basically, anytime there was something that was created, there was somebody involved who was communicating with multiple people to figure out how do we get this to people, right? With the term PM or product management, and especially product, has only really come into the industry in the last 20 or so years. So it's a new term, right? Project management, I think, has been there a little bit longer. But for product management, it's a newer term, but it's really something that's always been in the industry and in all industries, right? It doesn't really matter which one. If you're building anything, whether it's related to finance or to yeah, it could be literally any industry, you're going to have some product person involved, as you would hopefully like there to be yeah, somebody chasing down what's the real problem and being strict with that. Does anyone want to add anything to this?
Just I wanted to give one example that it's people are PMing at any level. At the restaurant level, the restaurant owners, when they put the product together, they are actually doing PM work without being called PM. When you go to a gyro place, you have the gyro combo number 1, number 2, number 3. He's thinking that how he's going to package this and sell it. So he's doing that work as well. So don't restrict yourself to thinking that PM is, only in tech. And companies use these positions differently. For example, when I was at Microsoft, product managers were a group of selected elites, and there were more program manager and project manager. At Workday, product managers team is much bigger compared to others. The program manager and project managers are smaller. Uber is totally different. So these roles are sometimes interchangeable. Think about it in that too. Thanks. This one we can probably leave for Q&A. If something comes up, it goes into details. If somebody has a question about a specific detail they want to drill down on product management, we probably can go to QA. I'm assuming this is the last slide.
Yep, that's right. So, yep.
I know, Brother Hasnain, we're a little over, but I wanted to touch on one key point that I'm seeing at my current place also. I thought I'd share that. If you go back to that trends in PM, and just wanted to piggyback off your point that yes, project management has been there for a long time, but lately product management has taken a lot more traction and more it's in limelight. And the reason why, because of the advent of Agile, companies have started looking. Historically, traditionally, they've looked at work in the form of project, but now that shift, I see that shift is happening where they're looking at work from a product lens, not necessarily from a project lens. And there are quite a few areas of responsible for this shift. They're seeing a lot of value in doing so, and I'm seeing that happening at our current company also. So typically in a project is unique by nature. It has a fixed start end date, and the team members in a project are usually from a diverse group, different groups, right? So they are assembled to come together and finish and deliver a project. But if you take it from a product standpoint, there's a dedicated team involved assigned to that product, meaning Agile is a form of delivery. It's a methodology that a lot of companies have embraced over a period of time for its efficiencies. So Agile focuses on building high-performing teams. And the way high-performing teams are built, if they're consistently and constantly doing the same type of work. So instead of bringing teams to work comes to them. They have clarity on what's expected out of them. They continuously improve. They are aware of what kind of blockers or issues they're likely to face. So all of this adds up in building high performance teams. So companies value this, are seeing a lot of value, and shifting their way of approach in budgeting, in looking at work from a project to a product setting. So just wanted to add that to the audience.
Excellent, thanks. That is wonderful. So that wraps us up for this session. Hopefully we brought a little clarity to what product management is, or PMing in general. Are there any questions?
Yeah, mashallah, thank you very much. Brother Hasnain, Brother Abbas, Brother Jarrar, and also Brother Hameed, an excellent presentation. Feel free to ask questions, kids, anything that's on your mind about product, project, program management. Don't be shy.
I have a quick question.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. I was going to ask. Here, let me find out how it will make sense. Nothing makes sense. Okay, yeah. So how often do you launch new features of stuff, like new products and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we will all give you slightly probably potentially different answers depending on how, like, again, like how mature the product is or how long it's been around, right? So if a product's been around for a while, like you might not release as many features, right? So for example, if you think of something like Facebook, right? Facebook's been around for a while. They won't do any big, like, you won't see any big changes to what the design looks like on the website very often. So it might be every 3 to 6 months, right? But I will say that typically, and this is what Brother Jarrar was speaking to as well, is that we want to deliver very quickly, right? So hopefully features are going out at the least every 2 weeks, and even if they're really small. But I think what you might be alluding to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like a bigger feature set. Those would hopefully go out at a bigger company. I think every month potentially. At a smaller company, it would be maybe every day.
Yeah. And I want to add that sometimes it's related to competition as well. You know, you might be planning to release, 3 months from now. I'll give you an example, like Uber wants to release this feature, or Uber Eats like group order, and finds out that some Grubhub or DoorDash is trying to do, or just released it. They might just say, you know what, we're just going to release much sooner. And that's where work-life balance comes in picture. And they might call and say, drop all the other projects, just work on this one. So it's all interrelated.
Also have a second question. Thank you so much. How does product management work with executive leadership?
Someone else take that? Go for it.
I think path to leadership, that's a great question.
Go ahead, Hasnain. You being the product manager of the group. Go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, of course. So, no, I think I want to make sure I understood the question right. Is how does product management work with the executive leadership? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yes, so very closely, right? Product managers need to get buy-in, especially when, like, I think you're alluding to like a bigger company, right? They're going to be meeting with executive leadership all the time, right? Because we would look at the executive leaders as somebody who has an ear to the market, and for example, an ear to competition as well, right? So they may have some competitive intelligence. They may have some ideas about, oh, this is what's coming. This is the industry trend. So we might get some larger strategic ideas from them. But also when we have ideas or we're coming up with ideas as a team, we want to make sure that we get buy-in from them as well. So we'll, for example, at my company, I have we have like a bi-weekly presentation, right? Where we bring up all our ideas, where we're at, where we're going, to our top leadership. And obviously the executive leadership can be wide, right? If you're talking about to a CEO, it's going to be less. If you're talking about to somebody who's maybe directly involved with the product, like a vice president, that would certainly be bi-weekly or monthly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, great questions.
I had one question on behalf of our youth, if I may. What are some of the risks to this profession that technology is perhaps posing? For instance, artificial intelligence, machine learning. It's like, what are some of the risks if someone wants to become a project manager or program manager? What should they be on the lookout for in terms of, hey, does this endanger this profession in any way, or does it force them to evolve in any way?
Certainly, that's a great question. I can start off, and I think when there's two parts. So one is that there's at least with product managers, the reason that there has been an increase, I think, on the technical side too, is because of that, is to defend against potentially that, is that you need to learn the lingo, you need to be on the latest and greatest in what's happening. Because if you can be on that cutting edge and understand what's happening, you can always adapt. And the rationale there is that there's always going to need to be somebody who's translating what the customer needs, what a person needs, to an internal stakeholder. Like, obviously that's not all that PMs do, but if we boiled it down to just being somebody who only cares about the customer and what they need, which a lot of people will say is product management in a nutshell, then that's going to be needed no matter what is going out, right? Because you can argue with whatever data invention or AI technology that we have, there's always going to be a gap, right? And the product manager is going to continuously look at that gap and continue to squeeze it and understand how do we work ourselves out of a job. And if you do, then you're really successful. So you could just move on to the next problem, right? Because that's my role too, is I want to work myself out of a job, right? I want to solve that thing for the customer so that it's not a problem at all. It's the best it could be, so I can move on to the next thing. Problems will always exist, and you need the translators there. But yeah, does anybody else want to add flavor to that? Or if we have other questions.
One thing in terms of project and program management, what I would add there is AI tools, all of these. There's a thing called RPA, robotic process automation. Brother Khalili is an expert in that as well. So all of these new technologies that are coming up, these are tools that help project manager, a program manager, or a product manager to kind of improve that process a little bit. But since this, what we were talking about earlier is, it's mostly a people related position. I think you're always going to have somebody. There's always going to be a need for somebody to facilitate these, right? I mean, a lot of mundane things like creating reports and Excel charts and stuff like that, those all could be automated, right? The reporting could be automated, but having that conversation, anticipating something that's going to happen, bringing people together, organizing that, I think some aspects of that, there's always going to be a need for that in the technology, in the industry.
Yeah, and one of the biggest areas, I see that happening a lot with me managing multiple work tracks under my project. It's almost like it is a program, but more like from project standpoint, is conflict management. You deal with a lot of people issues, and some people, they really want to make sure that they're heard, and they want their ideas to be picked up for design, technical discussions, and so on. So how do you navigate through those? And I don't think so AI or any kind of automation, as much as Brother Khalili is trying to put in, it may not, these career paths sometimes seem AI proof. So I think we still would need these roles which are more geared towards people understanding, leading people, managing their expectations, stakeholder expectations, and so on. I did wanted to point out to the group that there's a question by Brother Hameed there. How do you stay user focused?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think that is the essence of at least product. Sorry, it's actually a question I even ask myself all the time, right? Like, how do I stay user focused? Because I think what often happens in our roles is you can get lost in the details, right? You can get lost in saying, okay, we need to build this car, right? We can go back to that car example, and say there you only have 3 wheels and you need to get that 4th wheel, right? You might get obsessed with figuring out how to get that 4th wheel, or maybe how to optimize those 3 wheels, when you're not really thinking about, well, what did the person actually ask for, right? What do they actually need? So there's lots of tactics. I think the most common one is making sure you have a clear way to talk with your users, right? So that it's as easy as being able to send a text or hop on the phone at any point in time, and to be able to talk to a small group, right, that you consider your users. They could be, friends, or they could be people you've built those relationships with, but you want to be able to make sure you can access them easily, so you never hesitate, and it's part of your normal day-to-day. Sorry, I think someone was going to speak to this as well.
I just want to second what Brother Hasnain said. if you look at successful companies, Apple, even and enterprise companies, Workday, big recognition is on customer satisfaction. And the reason for that, when I was there for only 2 years, is how connected they are to customers. The user interviews, user focus, how they talk to customers, and how often they talk to customers, and they adjust the program or the feature. These are the ways that you do it. And it sometimes different for enterprise, like Workday's enterprise. Most of their customers are enterprise versus, say, Uber, which could be enterprise or consumer based. So having the strategy to talk as often to the customer, validate your design and feature with the customer, and you become the main tester. Your program manager, don't think that you're just a program manager or product manager. Test your own product day in and day out as much as you can. One thing that Uber, for example, emphasizes is for everyone, all the way to C-level, for them to drive certain time of the month and see how the customer feel, how the driver feel, and get that feeling for it. I mean, use your own product and then give feedback. So that's how you stay user focused. Anyone else wants to add? Amir and Hassan Haider have asked the most number of questions. I don't know if there's a reward for that, but that's a great start. That's how you get into this to this career.
So we're a bit out of time right now. If there are no more questions, I just want to thank our esteemed speaker panel. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to talk with our youth. Hopefully this will help them make a decision on which career is best for them, or at least will add to their knowledge. So maybe even down the road they can decide. But I don't think there are any more questions. Let me check.
Last thing is, I would encourage folks to look us up on LinkedIn, connect with us, even offline. If there's any help or any mentorship or any advice that any of us can provide, I think we'll be I'm speaking for others as a matter of fact, but I think none of us will object to that, and we'll be glad to help out anybody if you guys have any questions, concerns, any advice, just another shoulder. We'll be there. We're glad to provide that.
Thank you very much, everyone.